Hey guys, this is Drew. I will be previewing the Charles Schwab Challenge with the new stat model. So going to do kind of a two-part tutorial here. The first one I'm going to run through of just running lineups, the basic settings. So if you haven't already, this is the home page obviously, and Axis has an article up. So if you go to the home page or the PGA DFS page, you'll see this fantasy golf bag stat model and optimizer from Axis. So you can also view that one. It's a pretty good tutorial. And he actually runs a model and uses some of the filters. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hop into the stat model. And then what I'm going to do is walk you through running lineups, very basic, exporting those lineups and then uploading to DraftKings. And it works the exact same way for FanDuel. So I'm going to go ahead and load this up. You'll have to go through the portal. It'll validate you, and then you should be good. So this is what it looks like. Alrighty. So first thing you'll see here, in the top left, you'll have DraftKings pricing and FanDuel pricing. We'll have a second model that hopefully will be up in the next week or so, and it'll be only dedicated to Showdown. So keep an eye out for that. We'll obviously announce it in Slack and on the website. But for now, this will be main slates from the main stat model optimizer. So DraftKings, FanDuel. Right now I have DraftKings loaded, and working our way from the top, we have golfers, which is the player pool with all of the stats. And this includes the filters down the left side, which I'll get to in a second. The second tab is the optimizer tab, which we'll also talk about. This is where you actually generate your lineups and download them. And then also the settings that we can kind of constrain a little bit. You can limit your player pool, like one specific player, max exposure, and you can also randomize the projections, which I use a lot for PGA, really all DFS sports. I use some randomness, but I think that's a really nice feature for you to get a little bit more unique. And then obviously we'll start to add some constraints like ownership, etc. As we get through these first 2 weeks back. The last tab that you'll see at the top is custom projections. So for example, in the golfers tab, these are preloaded with our FGB projection, which is created by Axis. If you don't want to use these, what you can do is, or if you have another source, you create your own in Excel, whatever, you just take the DK player name, paste it in here, paste in the projection, and then you'll be able to use that when you optimize. So that's also a pretty nice feature. You have 3 ways of optimizing. So I'll go ahead and touch on that just because we'll run through the optimizer before we actually talk about Charles Schwab. So if you're not interested in the stat model, as it pertains to like running lineups, you're already familiar with it, then you can skip ahead a little bit and I'll touch on my model and kind of how I'm viewing the field this week. So the optimizer works with 3 different optimizations. The first one by default is the FGB projection, which if you run lineups off of the projection, you'll see you got Rory up here, John Rahm, Justin Thomas, Webb Simpson, etc. And then when you go to optimize, it'll only optimize by those projections. So there you get your lineup 1, 2, 3, and it's optimized by those projections. The next one, like I mentioned, was custom projection. If you load in player name with projections, you could even do 5 players that you want to just fix or you want to bump them up or down for some reason. If you load those in and run it as is, it'll use those custom projections. The other way to do it is if we do run a model. So I'll just do a real quick one here. So I'll use strokes gain, tee to green, and a little bit of putting. If I apply the model, you'll see the model rating gives us a percentile rank for each player. Above that, you'll see this checkbox. It says use custom model if it exists. So a minute ago, we didn't have a custom model, so it just used the projection. Now we actually have a model rating. So we're going to use the custom model. I'm going to hop over to the optimizer. I'm not changing anything in the settings right now. If I generate my lineups, you'll now see that these all run off of the rank that I'm using to compile the best overall rank. So you'll see a lot of the top rank guys based off of my model. So with that, let's go ahead and uncheck use custom model. I just want to use the FGB projections. So let's say we want to run our lineups. We made, we excluded some players. Let's say, Webb's going to be super popular. So inside joke, let's say I want to ban him this week. If we go over to the optimizer and go to settings, I can now choose how many lineups I want to build. It also shows you if you have locked players or excluded players down here. So 10, I want to run 10 lineups. My max player exposure, this is the actual count of the lineups. This isn't a percent. So if I only want, players in 60% of lineups, then I'll do 6 lineups. And then randomize. I do want to randomize it. So let's just say 20% here. And then we'll just click out of this box and then click generate. Takes 2-3 seconds for a couple lineups, not a big deal. And now we get our new lineup. So like this one here, John Rahm, JT, Oosthuizen, Snedeker, which will probably update out of the field. I think word is he withdrew, and then Sergio and stuff will add into the field. McCarthy, Werenski, etc. So these are based off the projections. And now what I want to do, again, this is just an example. I want to download this sheet. So it'll show up down here. You can see it at the bottom of my window. So if I open this Excel sheet, so now you get your lineup. So you can upload this straight to DraftKings, or you can, if you reserved entries, you can kind of download it. So I'll walk you through both really quick. So downloaded FGB-golf, and this is my 5th export for the day. So I'm going to go over to DraftKings, and then again, you're in the lobby. Just go to lineups. It's very easy. We'll go to lineups here. I'm going to go to upload lineups because I don't have any reserved entries. I actually have a ton of lineups already entered, but all you have to do is go to upload lineups, choose the CSV that you want, and then away you go. Just hit open, and then it'll launch. I'm not going to re-upload these. Obviously, I don't want to clutter my other lineups with the ones we just ran as an example, but super easy. You download it from here, and then once that's in your downloads or desktop, wherever you save it, just go to upload CSV, choose the file, and hit open, and it'll run through it here. If you do have reserved entries, so I'll just touch on this really quick. If you have lineups already reserved, or maybe you have placeholders, just go to edit entries, go to pick your sport. So we'll go to golf, classic, and then you choose this download. So like I only have one right now. Let's download it. DK entries, I'll open it here. And then like I reserved this entry, I think it was an old ticket, reserved this entry, and all I have to do is, copy and paste however many lineups I do have. I'll paste it in here. I'll save it. It says, do you want to save it as a CSV? I do. And now we'll hop back to DraftKings, upload the CSV I just did. So I'll actually do this one. It's not a big deal. And then you'll see successfully uploaded one entry. Idiots. One entry has been edited to reflect the lineups in your file, in your life. Wow. So that's pretty much how you do it, guys. Super easy. If you do have any questions, obviously continue to reach out to us. But basic steps for running the optimizer, and it works the exact same way on FanDuel. You set your settings, how many lineups you want, max player exposure. Again, this is global, not like we don't have specific player exposures, and then randomize. So, some people will use closer to Axis's projections. It'll be 5% or so. Some people really want to, some variation. You could do 50%, even higher if you really wanted to. And that just kind of generates, let's just say, so it is at 50% randomness, and now you just get a larger variety of lineups. So pretty easy. All right, so I'm going to relaunch this really quick. And I will note, we don't have this saved per user right now. So if you do leave this and come back, if you had bans or locks, it's not going to save those right now. But we will add that feature. But right now, I just wanted to mention, if you leave the optimizer and come back, your settings will be reset. All right, so now let's talk about the Charles Schwab Challenge. So with Colonial, there's a lot of stuff in the golf course that we look for. Obviously, driving accuracy is 50%, green regulation 60%. So you look at that and you realize that, driving, like the rough's usually down. Driving distance isn't a big deal because a lot of guys are hitting to the same spot off the tee. So you're really looking at second shots, and guys that have played well recently. Again, caveat is the coronavirus. But generally speaking, you would want to look at someone for this golf course that's been hitting their irons well, a lot of greens. You can roll in any other stats you want. Like we have DraftKings points. bogey avoidance, birdie or better, whatever you want to use. But I think your primary staple on this type of golf course is, where do people lose the most strokes or gain the most strokes to the field? Where's the real difference maker? And I think it's green and regulation. Strokes gain approach you can include in that. But for me, I'm going to build a really simple model here, using strokes gain approach. So what I'll do is I'll clear out those. I'll go down to strokes gained approach. I'll add that as a weight. I also want weighted green and regulation. So that's a big one for me this week, especially for longer term. Again, as you get more into the season, in a normal season, you have more recent results. So we can kind of mix and match, last week's, last 8 rounds, last 4 rounds of strokes gained approach. But for this, I really want to look at longer term samples. So I'm going to use weighted green and regulation. And then strokes gained field differential also is pretty valuable, especially in a strong field. I think that helps you weigh guys like, let's say a Hubbard or someone that's played really well on weaker field events versus guys like an Oosthuizen that play in these strong field events that tend to play well, but they don't, they're not going to finish in the top 10 like someone lesser playing in the Greenbrier or something. So I'll also add strokes gained field differential. So now I have my 3 weights. You can type in your weight that you want, or you can use the slider. So I'm just going to do strokes gained approach. Let's just do 30%. I really like green regulation, so we'll bump that to 40. And then for the remainder, we have 30% to strokes gained field differential. So a good little mix, a little bit of overlap with approach and strokes gained field differential, but not as much as like a strokes gained total to strokes gained approach. So I'll go and apply my model. You'll see a little note there, projections updated. And now I have my new model rating. So if I sort by this descending, you'll see McIlroy up top, Justin Thomas, Morikawa, Rahm, Xander. I mean, a lot of the guys you expect. There's an infinite number of ways you can decipher this by going down. You start using ownership a little bit too. But like I said, you can come over here and start browsing like, let's say bogey avoidance is valuable this week. As you go down, you can see Morikawa doesn't pop as much in bogey avoidance. And that's a little bit with the tournaments that he's played in compared to the field. So keep that in consideration. You can use all these different stats. So that's pretty much it from that point. And then from there, if you want, like, let's say you want to really trim your pool, there's going to be guys that haven't had any PGA Tour rounds, so they had a default projection 0 in the model rating. They're not going to show up anyways, but you could certainly just ban them. And then you could go down your list and just, maybe sort by salary and then see which ones stand out. Let's say we go down our model rating, and then Bryson. Bryson had a good turnaround the last couple months or last couple weeks before the season postponed, but maybe this isn't the best track for him in terms of what he said he's trying to do with his golf game, so we can ban that one. Dustin Johnson really has struggled. It's hard to know where his game's at. Ricky Fowler's kind of the same way. So there's a lot of different ways you can look through this and then run your lineup. So what I can do here, I'm going to uncheck this to use FGB projections. I just use the model to help kind of shrink my player pool a little bit. I want to run, let's just say 5 lineups will make it easy. And max player exposure, we'll just say 4. Randomize, we'll do 10%, keep it on the low side. And still here, you can see all the players you excluded. I didn't lock anybody, but you can certainly do that as well. So it'll run, take a couple seconds. So now you get your new lineups. No real surprise with some of these guys. They're obviously Redmond's played really well. Answer, Garcia's in here now, so that's good. Webb Simpson, Rory McIlroy. Like, you could go down the list and it looks pretty good. And then the last thing I'll mention is we do have the percentiles still. So for example, let's say strokes gain total, strokes gain heated green. You don't really know just blindly looking at this. What is 0.6 to 1.17? Is that a huge difference? Is that a small difference? So what you can do is use percentiles, and now you can see the difference, 42% to the 81st percentile. it's a pretty big difference. But when you look at it from a raw number standpoint, it doesn't seem like it's a huge difference. So percentiles are a good way. I know Axis likes that quite a bit. So it's totally up to you and how you want to view it. And then, of course, you can kind of shrink your – I'm using you can use the last 12 months. We'll apply that filter, and then you'll see the round count diminish. Probably get us closer to everyone in the same ballpark, yeah, except for Sungjae, who plays every week. But yeah, so everyone's in that 40 to 50 range. So a little bit more apples to apples in terms of round count. But that's pretty much it, guys. And like I said, you want to use your own projections or you want to tweak any of the projections, this is the easiest way to do it. And then the optimizer, you throw it in here, generate, and download. You're good to go. So I'll do a write-up and have a little bit more thoughts on specific names that I like. I'll try to target it a little bit towards the Millie Maker. I know Rap plays a lot of cash, and the core article isn't necessarily to target cash games or GPPs. It's more of like an overall pool standpoint. So I'll try to make some notes though that guys that stand out more for a cash game scenario versus GPPs like the Millie Maker this week. So hopefully you guys like it. As always, drop any questions or comments in Slack, and we'll continue to kind of roll out improvements. So happy to have this available to you, especially first week back, and build your lineups and then go from there. So good luck this week, guys, and we'll see you later for the kind of final touches of my core article. See ya.